whiteboard works great. This one we're still practicing with. Okay, so you're good to start the meeting now.
Okay. I'd like to welcome the members of the Complete Streets Committee and any folks from the public that are tuning in to watch our October 29, 2021 meeting of the Niskayuna Complete Streets Committee. Welcome to all the members and welcome to folks out in the public. Our roll call quickly. I see Paulina Manzo is with us. Hi, Paulina. How are you? I don't see Tess just yet. Carla, how are you today?
Hi, Bill. Good. How are you doing?
I'm here with new background. David Hogenkamp has resigned from the committee. He's on CDRPC and he has other obligations with Metroplex, but he's still very much interested in what we're working on, and we can keep him on email so he can keep up with us a little bit. Dart Strayer's in the Schaefer room. Hello, Dart. How are you? Jim Levy is here.
Hi, how are you? Good.
And we saw his picture, but now it's just a J there. So hello, Jim Levy. How are you?
I'm here. Good morning. Good afternoon.
And Elise Orban, is Elise with Jean Fody or not yet?
She'll probably join later, but it's something we can discuss.
That's right. She has to get out of school and go over to town hall. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we might want to think about changing our time back to, I don't know what, but she can't quite make the 2:30 anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew, how are you? I see you survived our first meeting. You're back for more, so that's encouraging. And
yep.
And Catherine, not here with us just yet, but will be along, I trust. Our second. Okay, and Laura, thank you for joining us. And Jean, and is Clark in the Zoomosphere out there at home joining us, or does he have the day off? Clark.
Yeah, not today. He's done for the day.
Okay. Anyway, we're ready to go. Thanks for everyone stopping in. We have the minutes from September 24. I don't have any suggestions or modifications myself, but anyone else that's read the minutes that would like to make an addition or correction, if you'd give us the line number and your suggested change, we can suggest those. Anyone? If not, I move that we accept the minutes of our September 24 meeting as prepared by the planning office, and on the search for a second. Okay, second by Jim Levy. All in favor of accepting the minutes? Just a show of hands quickly. Good, all in favor. So we've accepted the minutes, and let's move on to kind of old business / new business. It's both old and new because we're struggling a little bit to hear Laura's voice from the town boardroom. And so some of what we learned about 1356 Balltown and Harmon Grove Apartments, we missed a little of that. So we're here today. And if people have had a chance to look at the diagrams and offer anything, and I'll kick it off with just one thought, if I may, and then open it to the rest of the folks on the committee. I have kind of driven and walked the, I guess it's parking lot access way that comes from Knott Street East past the hardware store, and then you have Kindercare, and then it's kind of the back parking lot of WRGB, the TV station. And I can see if I lived in any one of these apartments and I wanted to get over to ShopRite, I would just kind of walk down to the end of the driveway here on next to Balltown Road, and I'd get out on Almeria and I'd walk down to the street behind WRGB, and I would walk straight down until I came out at the sidewalk where used to be Steaks, etc., and then a law office. But then I'd probably just walk up the hill a little ways and hope their town put a crosswalk from the post office over to ShopRite, and I would walk right across there to get access to ShopRite to do grocery shopping and, hit the post office and everything. And so I mean, if people can take that shortcut, I'm not sure they'll walk all the way back out to Balltown and go around. And we don't have a pedestrian access through the Van Antwerp apartments yet. So I'm just guessing, even though it might be kind of private parking road, that it will grow up as a pedestrian access way. So anyway, that was my 2 cents worth. And I'd even asked Laura, I mean, we couldn't stripe it, but would KinderCare or WRGB, would they say, hey, we don't want people walking in our parking lot? So
I know that I've read in the file before that WRGB definitely discouraged people walking through their parking lot. WRGB specifically, they put up like a 6-foot fence because they were having trouble, I believe, with kids walking to the high school, and they discouraged it. But it was a while ago. It was definitely, I mean, I'm going to say at least 10, 15 years ago. So I don't know if things have changed for them, but the planning board, and maybe you guys too, did ask to see if they could do a road connection with WRGB so they wouldn't need a curb cut on Balltown Road. And they said they reached out to WRGB and they said no. So I don't know because I didn't see any correspondence, but generally speaking, at least in the past, they haven't encouraged pedestrians through their property.
they do have their satellite discs in the back, and I think they're worried about those maybe getting damaged or being the target of someone with nefarious motives. And so I just don't think they're very keen on walkers or bikers back there. But again, if you lived in one of those apartments, you'd say this is a walking way to get over to ShopRite, and people will just take their shopping bag and head down the road. So
yeah, the nice thing is here they're all interconnected. So, and these guys really don't seem to mind at all. KinderCare, Ace Hardware, the law office, the professional building, those guys, that just seems to be a normal shared parking. The only one that seems to be a little sensitive, which, like you said, maybe it's because they have sensitive equipment, is WRGB. But the whole point, like in the comprehensive plan and everything, is to join these parking lots. I mean, the comprehensive plan encourages joined parking lots, not isolated parking lots. So that's why they're all built like that. And I think it's supposed to be so that you can wind your way through here on bicycles or cars or what have you.
Well,
This one's WRGB.
it's good access management practice for that road to connect into the existing driveway that already exists there. And it could be redone in such a way that it seemed like the primary direction would be coming in off of Balltown Road and heading into this new development where CBS 6 would then kind of become more like a driveway, not be the primary, motion coming in. As a professional transportation planner, I think it's horrible if we can't make that connection. I'd prefer not to see that connection come out onto Balltown Road, and I'd actually be surprised if it doesn't come up in discussion with DOT, but I don't work for DOT. But this is exactly this type of scenario where, as a professional planner, we push to not have that new access on Balltown and have it go to CBS 6. And things can be done to try and divert the traffic and make sure that it doesn't think that it's supposed to go into the back there. As far as the pedestrian connection, I mean, if you want to be a good neighbor, you should be allowing people to walk through, especially if that's what's in the comp plan and that's the goal of the town. But again, it is private property and you have to work within what you have to work with. But it doesn't come off well as being a good community neighbor if it's just an outright no and not really having a discussion about it and discussing why there are issues or something that might be able to be resolved. Because I think people will be cutting through there anyway. And then we may have issues with, who knows, maybe the police get called and people get arrested for trespassing or something. And really it should be a pedestrian throughway in my opinion. But that one aside, it'd be a real shame if we don't have that connection, the road connection. If we have another, road connection to Balltown. That's my thought.
Yeah, like you still want to push for them to keep trying to make the one point of access on Balltown Road to be the CBS or the WRGB entrance, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And I would say, the new development would have to kind of redesign the road in a way again so that the main movement is going into the development and CBS 6 becomes more of a driveway, even if it means putting a little, kind of monument sign or something there to make it look like a driveway and split it into more like a boulevard where it becomes a CBS 6 driveway. So it's apparent that that becomes private property, at least for the vehicular movement. Yeah, if I was in a room with DOT and CBS 6 and others, I would push very, very hard not to have that connection on the Balltown.
Yeah, because the farther you get it away from the intersection with Van Antwerp and Balltown, the better, too.
Specifically,
it's-
do we know what WRGB's concerns are? Because I think if they could articulate why they're not willing to do that, I mean, I think it gives us a starting point to sort of get that road through potentially.
I think we could, like, I don't mind reaching out to WRGB and asking them if we could have a meeting and show them some of the plans and see what their concerns were. Maybe that would be more helpful than having the developer reach out to them.
I think so. Matter of fact, if I were WRGB, I wouldn't necessarily want that to be a regular town road going back there. But I think if the town were just wanted a pedestrian walkway there, that, would they be troubled by having pedestrians walk through there? I mean, I think that would be something you'd want to find out what their concerns are and whether they can live with that myself.
Laura, is this going to be a town road or a private
They want
road?
it to be a private road. And actually, like, this is the first time I've noticed this, or maybe this is the first time they've drawn it this way, but they're showing the property lines at edge of pavement, which is really unusual. So I have to look into that. I've only had this drawing for like a day, but I did want to show it to you guys because I know that we did struggle a little bit at our last meeting, and so what we decided to do was about these two plans and then talk about them again today. But one of the main things that you guys had said is make sure the sidewalk connects, and they do connect the sidewalk now. So the sidewalk goes from Van Antwerp Village over here all the way to the sidewalk that CBS built. Yay!
Oh, good.
I'm sorry,
looks-
where's the sidewalk? Is that the green dotted line?
This here. Can you see like the sidewalk that CBS built? Can you see my little guy here?
Oh yeah, now I can.
Yeah, it goes to here. This is a private home residence that sort of has a sidewalk, but really doesn't. And so they're proposing literally to connect the sidewalk all the way to Van Antwerp Village, which is
Oh, okay, great.
what we
Thank
wanted.
you.
Before they only had the sidewalk right in front of their building, so then there was a gap here,
And again,
and there was a gap here. And they grumbled
Right.
about it when we brought it up, but they put it on here, so yay.
yeah, it looks like they also extended
Laura?
that drive for the emergency entrance to CVS now, because I don't think that went all the way through last
They
time.
did.
Which means,
Yeah, they also did that this year.
which means that with the exception of the potential for them plowing snow up at the end of that, which they'll probably do, that provides a direct pedestrian connection to CVS, so they don't have to go out to Balltown and around and come back, which people probably wouldn't do anyway. They'd probably walk through the woods. So
Right, yes.
that's good
And
to see
this
too.
is better. It's better this way anyway.
Yeah.
This is better.
Laura,
Yeah,
did you hear us? Laura?
yes.
So the WRGB is owned by Sinclair Broadcast Group. So it's a bigger conglomerate. They might be the ones that make the decision on that stuff.
Yeah, we have some local contacts that we could reach out to though. They got like people, the
But
people who submit
I know
voting
they've owned them
permits
for like the
and
last
stuff
couple of
everywhere.
years.
Yeah.
Laura, are there internal sidewalks in this, or do people just walk on the road, or is there there's no internal sidewalk here, right?
There's none proposed. Like I have asked and thought that it would be a good idea to have internal sidewalks or a multi-use path with like a public easement over it, right? So that
Yes.
you could have people go in and out and they couldn't kick them out. But it's not currently on the plan. They're doing everything they can to discourage cut through traffic. But I think that encouraging pedestrian and bicycle cut through traffic is much safer. to come out up here, go to the high school or wherever you're going, than to go down to CVS and cross closer to Van Antwerp.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see this as becoming a major cut through road. I actually think if it connected to the CVS 6 driveway, it would be even less so if you designed it properly, because it would
Yeah.
still look like kind of a driveway. So only people that knew about it and really wanted to do it would probably make, you know, all those turns to do a cut through. Everyone else is going to figure out just to stay on the roads.
So
But you never know.
this internal loop that goes where it says culvert, there's extra parking by 19 and 20 and then 11 and 12. Can that road be widened any to include a sidewalk on the outer edge and then potentially, you know, a bike lane? And then connect into that interior lane?
Yeah,
That might-
kind of like where the green dots are, you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To encourage, you know, anyone coming from Van Antwerp to use that as a cut through for pedestrians.
Isn't that a wetland area or like a swale type?
Where the blue is.
Is going to be the storm, but I mean, I think it's like, I would definitely, my preference would be to request it. I think that you could definitely fit it here. The only tight place might be right along, like between 2 and 3, because they're tight anyway. But, you know, but if they change their entrance to CVS, then it really wouldn't be tight at all, because you could just continue the sidewalk up here and then down. I don't know.
Yeah, and if they continue that, it's less pavement on the site. It opens up a little flexibility in the spacing.
Yeah.
And, you know, as far as, you know, what Paulina was saying, you know, with that green area, you know, they're proposing it as a swale. I'm not an engineer, but I have to imagine that they could bury that and put in the proper stormwater management techniques and grade the road the proper way that you could use that space, you know, for a sidewalk, or a little extension if we want to do a bike lane or whatever the case may be. But again, I'd have to leave that to the engineers. But
Are they at the minimum width of the road, or do they have room to shrink the road a little bit to put a sidewalk in?
Yeah, I have to follow up a little bit on that, because that's, like I was saying, you know, it's showing the property line right on the edge of pavement, which
Yeah.
I have never seen before. I mean, normally the standard right of way is 60 feet, right? So, well, I'll take a look at it. I don't see, they don't have a road cross section yet or anything like that. Still concept.
Could they have a little cut through going through like an open space, and so they don't have to go through the CVS parking lot? Like just have like where the existing asphalt path is right on the edge of the property line for 13, unit 13, and just have some like little like bike cut through there, and then you'd be on less of the road. And well, in terms of like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, something like along here, so that people could cross, like maybe at the Heartland and then go on up through here.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is a single family home that they don't own. This one here is a single family home that they do own and they would take down.
Okay.
But these guys are their own people.
Okay.
So this house will stay.
Okay. Okay.
But
and I'm assuming that existing house is going to ask for some buffering or something from, you know, from these new houses. So even if you put something in that area that Carlos talking about, I assume we're going to be talking about putting in some bushes and trees and things to soften the new development from that
Very
single
likely.
family. So it would still have, you know, I'm sure that it would work. The space is there.
So you'd have a buffer and then a path on the other side of the buffer, getting back to the street?
Yeah, between some bushes or whatever that I'm assuming will go in there eventually in the new unit number, what is that?
Okay.
13. Yeah.
13,
So that could work.
13.
Yeah.
The sidewalk goes down to Van Antwerp Apartments. I know people go through the parking lot at Van Antwerp Apartments, which is, you know, they know what happens and it's a private. I don't know whether they would restrict that. And actually the access on the next road down in Van Antwerp Apartments, it's almost kind of a nice straight shot across, but I don't know if they'd be willing to talk about an easement where it would just be a walkway. In other words, it wouldn't have a fence that's segregated. It would just be the town would have a walkway in their parking lot, and then it would take you to the gate, and then you'd come right out, really across from the parking lot at ShopRite, and it's kind of a cow path now, but it would be a walkway, kind of in the back of Van Antwerp Apartments that you could go down, or even if they were willing to do it in this front sidewalk, just if you trim the things a bit on the side there, so people, which I'm guessing they're going to do anyway, they're just going to walk through the driving lane at the Van Antwerp Apartments to get down to ShopRite Plaza. And
Yeah, they remember we've looked at this before because it doesn't show on my aerial, but obviously this parcel here is where the new apartment building's going, and we have an easement that you can kind of probably just visualize because you can see the little hanger doodad here. Like we have a pedestrian easement here, and then I know Bill and I and some of you have been on here for a long time, like walked up and down Van Antwerp and looked because we were thinking of a possibility of trying to get the public easement to extend all the way down to here, like through along the road of Van Antwerp Village or whatever. But yeah, I mean, now you've got a sidewalk that ends right here. This is obviously private property, but there's a sidewalk connection up to here as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that they particularly like people walking through their apartment, but as long as they just, do it without mischief.
Yeah, of course, it's going to get more with probably a little bit more anyway with these apartments and other people. So, I don't know, at some point, if they're like WRGB, they'll say, look, this is private property. We don't want people just walking through, or whether the town should say, look, could we work out something where we paint a walk path over there, and maybe the town could assume some liability for things that happened on the walk path or something like that would make it more user-friendly for walkers. But that's probably a topic for another day, but it is just a thought, something we talked about before, that, pedestrians will kind of take the path of least resistance and, use it to get from point A to point B. So anyway, anybody else have an additional comment on 1356 Balltown Road? Okay. If we may, Laura, can we move on to Harmon Grove Apartments?
Yeah.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, I was looking at the
Yes, go
traffic
ahead,
numbers
Doug.
before we move on, and what's interesting about them is they have the single-family home count, and then they have the condo townhouse count, and they're substantially different. It's almost 40% less. I don't know. I would think that these would be closer to the single-family home traffic, and I was just wondering if why that is. Why for townhouses it's so much lower, particularly in this situation that we have here.
My guess is they might be looking at older adults that are getting out of their homes, that are going to live here, that want to stay in this unit, but aren't necessarily driving out and back to work every day. And if they can get to the post office and the store and the pharmacy and everywhere else by walking, that they won't be driving their car. They'll be walking to destinations, and so there'll be less traffic.
Well,
Yeah, I'm just wondering, though, that Balltown Road, particularly at rush hour, is quite busy. And if I look at the peak, 19 cars during that time. I mean, I don't know, how do we feel about that? Can we use that to get sort of the roads lined up with WRGB? Maybe use that as more incentive.
I think we'd have to talk to WRGB. They may have some legitimate security issues with their satellite discs or their parking, and dig in and say, we might be able to live with some pedestrians walking behind, but it's private property, and we don't want the town making a road between our main office building and our parking lot and satellite dishes. So, I guess they would say that. or my recollection is when they did put a satellite tower in, I was at a planning committee meeting, and that's what they did say. So if it's some of the same people there, I'm guessing they would not be in favor of a road back there.
So Jim, maybe this question's better for you. Because you have expertise in this area. Do you believe that 19 cars going on Balltown Road during peak hours, is that going to substantially impact the level of service of that intersection right down by CVS?
No, 19 cars on Balltown Road, when I think Balltown in this part of town is one of the highest trip generation routes in the entire Capital District. 19 cars is a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. I mean, if someone wants to make a left, they may be sitting in that driveway forever trying to make a left at peak, and they probably won't even try. But no, I don't. 19 cars is really nothing, in my opinion, especially on Balltown.
Well, in as a side question, how accurate do you think these numbers are, Jim, for 17 homes and 20 townhomes?
So,
I
I
had
mean,
the
they're
same
all, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had the same questions as Dart when I looked at those numbers. How accurate are they,
Yes.
and how realistic is that?
It's an estimate, and if you look at the bottom, Laura brought it up here. A and B says exactly what it's based on. Their ITE land use codes 210 and 220. 210 is single-family residential. 220, I'm guessing, is a townhome or a multifamily. It's probably just townhome. I'd have to look. So they use the trip generation manual, which is, that the IT trip generation manual is the go-to guide for doing this. And so this is how these studies are done. And Laura knows, she's seen plenty of these too. So I don't question it. I know the staff at VHB, these all looked legit to me. I don't have the green book. It's expensive, but it looks legit to me. There's a difference in the number of people that they assume live in townhouses and how they use their cars and things like that. So I really don't question these numbers. They don't look like they're off to me. And I would trust VHB's numbers. VHB staff. As I would trust most everyone else too. Just put that out there since it's being recorded. So I don't think the trip generation numbers really have any concern for me. It's Balltown Road. It's a busy road. It's just a fact.
It didn't go over well, but I was telling Clark this today because we were talking about adding trips to Balltown Road today. And we actually had someone from DOT, I think the last time these guys had a proposal that came, and basically, and before, I think the trips generated was like maybe 40 or 50, like it wasn't 19, it was more than this. And the DOT said that's nothing. Like we don't consider Balltown Road to be at capacity, and we don't consider this to change a single thing on Balltown Road. It did not go over well in the meeting room though at all. We had people come like for multiple meetings after saying we don't really care how the DOT feels about Balltown Road, but like for sure DOT does not consider this at all to be anything.
Typically their threshold is 100 new trips per hour in the peak hour.
When I moved here from the West Coast, and I-5 and is just jam-packed for hours. And when I moved here and people were complaining about like sitting on Balltown for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, like when school let out, and I would just laugh. I mean, it has gotten worse in the time that I've lived here, definitely. But yeah, this is nothing compared to New York City or Boston or Portland or any other big city. But still, it is gotten a lot worse just in the 10, 15 years that I've lived here. So
it does, but go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Well, I was just saying, like, you read these things where you don't want to actually build a parking lot for like Christmas level parking issues, right? Because then you just have a giant asphalt parking lot that's not filled most of the time. And I think the DOT, you don't necessarily want to design a road for the maximum level of traffic that is going to carry at peak times, because then it becomes a barrier and divides neighborhoods and things. And majority of the time, the road doesn't need to be built like that. So if you have to sit on Balltown Road for 15 minutes, it's okay. And I think that's actually how DOT feels about it. But one of the big things you guys all know is that they feel like people now get diverted off of Balltown Road to save 2 minutes on their trip and go through like Old Niskayuna, and that's where people start to feel really frustrated because they should be staying on the main corridors and just wait for a second. But some of them don't. I do, but some of them don't.
Balltown Road is the major north-south route this side of the Northway. I mean, it's just, that's what it is. And we just have to deal with that. I mean, I don't think people would like the alternative. There are really two alternatives to trying to get traffic off that road. It's divert them somewhere else or blow out the road and make it 4 lanes. And I don't think anyone wants to see 4 lanes running through this part of Niskayuna. We actually had this exact same discussion about Freeman's Bridge Road in Glenville when I worked over there. They were talking about blowing that out to 4 lanes from the river all the way up to the Five Corners intersection. And the study that we did convinced the community leaders and the public that that was not their best option. They really didn't want to do that. So I don't think that's going to happen. And the study we wrote certainly didn't do that. I don't think anyone wants to see that on Balltown Road either. And to be honest, when you do 4 lanes, there's a thing called induced traffic. So if you widen it and put in more lanes, more people are going to start using it because they think they can get through. And it's to a degree of self-fulfilling prophecy to a certain point. At a point it ends, but the thing about traffic in the capital region, the vast majority of it, it's not that bad, and it's very well known. You know where it is, you know when it's going to be, generally speaking. So
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating to increasing Balltown to 4 lanes by any means. I'm just concerned that down the road we get so much traffic that, you know, that's the suggestion that's being made. And I don't have a good feel. I trust your judgment on this, Jim. You know, I think 19 sounds like a big number, but perhaps it really isn't at this time.
Not on Balltown Road.
Yeah.
I'm having this discussion actually with another community. They're proposing 120 acres of land, and that's 2 homes. So it's all in the perspective. You know, I don't think 32 homes on 120 acres of land is a whole lot, to be honest. Most communities would have a whole lot more than that. You know, better approaching 100 or 120 homes versus 30. So, you know, I don't think Balltown Road will ever be blown out to 4 lanes. Don't get me wrong, but again, I'm just throwing that out there as, you know, that's really the only option, be to start widening it and diverting traffic. And I don't think anyone wants to see it widen or divert on our side roads, which is Laura said we're already seeing.
Won't Harmon Grove create a lot more traffic than that further down on Balltown? And like the apartments on, what's the name of the street where the pool, the apartments along the Mohawk River.
River's Ledge, yeah. They both have trip generation summary tables. I think that Amador, that the single family home project did a full traffic study, you know, like that big. And they actually had to do some traffic mitigation. And one of the things was they had to realign Riley Road with the GE intersection. They actually did some mitigation to traffic in order to be able to go in.
But that's like 138 apartments there. Is that what they're proposing?
River's Ledge is 160. Amador Homes, the one that's sort of off Riley Way and Schwaber Drive, is 66 single family homes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. What we have in our packet here, which actually hasn't come back. I almost didn't put it back on our agenda, but I know we really couldn't hear each other last time, so I brought it back. This is just a proposal. Riley Way is what I was just talking about. Over here is 66 single family homes, but this would be how many? 138 apartments would be proposed to come out on the top of Balltown Road there. So, I mean, apartments in that manual that Jim was just talking about generate even less than I think townhomes, because they typically can be like single people, or there's a higher percentage of, you know, whatever. It's a blend, but they study how apartments generate traffic, and then they put it all into the manual that the engineers use. And I think, so, you know, just estimating from being a planner, but it would probably generate even still less than 100 cars in the peak AM and PM hours. But you can look and see if there's things that they can do to mitigate traffic here and ask for them.
Okay, on Harmon Grove, why don't you tell us a little bit about pedestrian access, some thoughts on that, on this project?
Yeah, so we talked about this a lot, and they actually truly haven't come back to the planning board because I told you guys this before, which is the reason why that other one doesn't have measurements of how wide the road is, but these are still both conceptual. But I just bring up, because my computer's working, because I went into my office. I'm going to show you an overall aerial, because maybe we didn't have this last time.
Welcome, Catherine. It's nice to see you joining us. So hope you're having a good day.
I know, I had to go in my junk file to find it.
Oh, sorry about that. You can email
No, that's
me.
okay. Last time it was in the deleted file. This time the invitation was in my junk file.
Oh, dear. Sometimes that's what happens when the town emails something. It's the truth. So maybe we did look at this a little bit last time, but like, I'll just highlight them. This parcel, and this parcel. The blue ones are really, I could reorient it maybe so that it makes more sense, but that's the 4 parcels really that you're seeing in the sketch that you have in your packet. And this guy up here is where the 66 single family homes are. This aerial just hasn't been updated to the road being built. But we had talked, I think the last time, that if there's a way to connect these apartments to the over here is the community pool and senior center, that we would like to build that connection. It would be like great for a bunch of reasons. One, like all these homes on Balltown Road are pretty isolated in terms of like recreational opportunities. So if you could get them some kind of trail over here, they have access to a much bigger park than anything that we could build inside of these areas. And then also, I mean, it would be really nice to just be able to have a home here and then walk over and, you know, swim in the town pool or whatever. It'd be cool. And I think that if we could make it that trail, like you could make these connections, because down here is, you know, Iroquois Village. I don't think it would take too much to get Iroquois Village to connect in over if we could get, you know, a trail to them. So then you can start connecting in all what I think that where we have our multi-use family apartment complexes by and large is so isolated. Like, it's so isolated. They can't walk to anything. They're all clustered together and you're in an industrial park. Like, starting to be thoughtful about the way that we can make connections for these, you know, I mean, it's a pretty dense population when you have apartment complex would be great. So that's one of the things that we were talking about the last time.
I think we know. Go ahead, Bill.
One of the things I'd like to ask about is I have my Rails to Trails magazine here, but in it there was a story about communities around that have approached the power companies to use the land underneath the power lines to put in hike and bike trails. And this, I mean, really, when you look at it, that diagram you had before, certainly people that want to get from Balltown Road over to the hike and bike path wouldn't have to go, say, behind Craig School and all the way up and over the bridge near the Rexford Bridge and then back down. They'd be able to just cut right across and you'd pick up the community center right there, the swimming pool. And even if we build another community center, you know, where the old water sewer garage was or something, I'm assuming the town will still keep the pool and the recreation areas there. And so if you look at that power line strip, I mean, it takes you right across to access to the community center. And, you know, arguably you might even be able to get down to the bike path here if you went across Aqueduct Road. And certainly it connects people to the pools. So that's a real thought right there, is just saying, hey, can we put a stretch of hike and bike path underneath the power lines to go across there?
You know, Bill, in the
Are they being
crossings
successful?
colony, they've actually done that along the power line. So there is a good example in Colony where they've done that. The other thing too is there is the rail bed there that could be used to connect to the bike trail that runs through that area there. I know Laura and I have talked about that a couple times. It may be a stretch, but that certainly is something that we should keep in mind as well. But the crossings definitely has utilized existing power lines access.
I asked Dave Bucco about that last night. I ran into him and I said, gee, at some point the town would like to talk to you about putting a hike and bike path on the top of that railroad bed. And, we've been talking about it for 30 years and the people that owned the property before were okay. And I think Dave might be okay too. And so, I'd really like to just ask and get an easement while we can. It may be a while before we get it there, but if the town has permission to do it and we have a written record of that, that's a big deal. And so I think that would be a good thing to get. So
I just had 2 points. One, I think we discussed this before, is that trail connections up in this area in general are in the comprehensive plan. So doing this type of thing will be consistent with implementing the comp plan, which we can't forget. And we thought, we didn't really get into it with the last development, but the comp plan does have a lot of weight to it. So if we want to do something, whether it's, CBS 6 or someone else, and the comp plan talks about doing something, we do have that, in our back pocket. We really should be utilizing that in our discussions. But so this is consistent with the comp plan. And my other point was going to be, with all the units back here that Laura talked about, and what exists and what's coming in, talking about traffic on Balltown Road. If we put these trail connections in, and that's kind of the whole point of this committee, hopefully those people aren't going to hop on Balltown Road and then go down, down to the river or back down the other way to Lexington or whatever. I'm sorry, not to Lexington, to Providence, and make their way around in a car. And so the people up here will be able to say, you know what, it's a quarter mile. I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to hop on my bike and go over there and keep those vehicles off the road. Because that is another part of what we're really trying to do here, is keep vehicles off the road. So that'll help keep traffic off Balltown for these local trips, which is really what we should be doing. Because honestly, a lot of what goes on in Balltown is pass through traffic, and traffic coming in and out of town for work. So, we have to keep that in mind. So if we can make it easier for the locals and the people who live here to get where they want to go without having to go on to Balltown, then we really should be advancing that. And again, it's consistent with the comp plan. And I would argue eventually, though, it's tougher to do, that all of these, the connections to the apartments and everything eventually should be connecting back in with our discussions we've had about getting across Balltown to Craig and then connecting to the other side of town. It's a little more difficult, but still, I think something we need to keep in the back of our minds as this all starts to come together over time.
Yeah. Bill, also your idea with using the power line, the town of North Greenbush, actually, in their recreational open space master plan, they used that like 20 years ago or whatever. I don't know if they implemented it, but they had proposed to use that as a connecting trail and recreational trail. So
yeah, Carl, that's part of the Empire State Trail now, and the I think it's the electric something trail over in Rensselaer County. It used to be really, really hard to get trails and public access under the high tension lines and the power lines. That, I think, is cracking a little. It depends, but it does, I think, still take a lot of political will and a lot of effort to get done. But it depends on the location and it depends on who you're talking to. But certainly it's...
Is there a safety issue? Or I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't see a safety issue. Anyone can kind of get access back in there now if they want to hop on a bike or go walk back there and, do whatever. Certainly, if you have a trail back there, in my opinion, and you read books, the more eyes you have in places, the safer they generally are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a trail and there are people walking back and forth, then that's great. And if you have some issues, obviously that's something we have to deal with. But generally speaking, no, I wouldn't say there's any more of a safety issue if there are, utility lines there, or it's just an old abandoned railroad right away, like the yellow line, I guess, is showing there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just wondering if the other towns had success with National Grid. I have a hard time with National Grid, but it would be great to put bikes paths under there, because you could easily make the connection to Iroquois Village that way, and it's dry. Around the power lines is like wetlands, but they built up like underneath the power lines to be able to access them. So it's like the perfect place for a multi-use path.
Yeah, in reality, there's already double track Jeep trails, right? So we could conceivably start letting people ride, or walk on those dirt paths if we could get the permission to do so. Laura, I know someone who worked on managing the Rensselaer County Electric, whatever it was, trail. I can reach out and just see, kind of how they did that. I've got some other connections. I'm sure you do too. But we can start maybe talking around to see how people, kind of crack through that. But yeah, traditionally, utilities and railroads have been very resistant to having trails on or near their properties, with some good rationale behind it, like a railroad. But that's cracking. So let's see what we can do to start that dialogue here, or get some ideas, I guess.
That sounds
Okay.
good to me.
Is there anything else on this, Laura, that we want to recommend to the planning board in terms of pedestrian access or anything on the Harmon Grove Apartments?
No, so I'm just gonna highlight the next time we discuss at planning board, that we want the multi-use connections between the apartment complexes and to the senior center. And I think that'll be the main point now while it's still conceptual. And then I'm excited. I didn't think that you could put multi-use paths under those power lines because National Grid is sometimes hard, but I do actually I made Amador give me one of their deeded crossings for the underneath the trail. So maybe that's a point of leverage that we could talk with them already about.
And Laura,
crossing.
I just pulled up the Mohawk River Trail map, the Lock 7 trails, and they have one that's listed as Power Line Trail that goes right under the power line. So I don't know if, however, that got cited as a trail.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to manage expectations. It's not easy, as Laura said. It's not easy, but I think it may be possible because it's happening a little bit more. But I do think it takes.
It's happening in other communities, so I think the door is kind of open a little bit, and we should just try to push through it.
Oh, we should absolutely try it and see what we can do. I mean, that connection makes all the sense in the world, so we should definitely try and do it.
Okay,
And I think
why
for
don't we move on to
safety
2147
issues,
Eastern Parkway?
power line.
Go ahead, Dart.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, there are probably safety concerns, but the trail that goes under the power lines in Colony, they actually built like fences, high stockade fences around the towers, so you'd have to really work hard to climb them. So I think there are solutions, and I was just saying that I'm agreeing.
Yeah, and they take the ladder rungs off the lower end, so you have to have a ladder to get up it and things like that. And actually, if you go to the Vischer Ferry Dam on the other side of the river and you walk along the river, the trails that they have along the Mohawk River on the other side there run along the high tension lines, not exactly along them, but adjacent to them, and you can get to them. You can walk past them and up around them. So, like I say, they're out there. There are examples we can certainly use.
Okay, and I will also scan the last the chapter I just got in the Rails to Trails magazine that has examples of hike and bike paths under the power line, so we can see that other communities are doing the same thing. Okay, let's move on to Eastern Parkway, 2147, and we looked at this last time briefly too, didn't we, Laura? And
Sorry, I was just writing down a note. A couple meetings ago, we looked at this. It's been a while since it came back because they were doing engineered drawings. But I mean, one of the main things that we wanted to see was they had a sidewalk, I think that stopped or only went from the parking lot to the front of the building. And we wanted to make sure they brought the sidewalk to the edges of the property lines, which they did.
okay.
So I actually think you can see it best right here. So I mean, we can certainly discuss further, but I just wanted to make sure like this is what we asked them to do, and it is here now. If we had any other thoughts, but I think.
Laura, can you remind
landed.
us all exactly where this is?
Yes, it's
The map didn't calculate for me again. I can't
like
remember.
right across from Temple Gates of Heaven.
Okay, it is. I think the little arrow on the
It's
cover
a
sheet of
little
the
bit
map
off.
is in the wrong place because it looked like it was up closer to Union Street. I mean to Balltown Road.
I'll
So-
tell you. Well, you know what? I could probably. Well, that's okay.
I know which one you're talking about now. That's what I thought it was. It just didn't look like that on the inset map.
It's like this old. It's. I mean, it's not super old, but it was a medical.
it's right by
it was
that
a medical
intersection.
building. This guy before, and then all the doctors' offices in this building moved to 1769 Union Street, and so then it was vacant for a little while. See, here's
So if you turn
Temple
around,
Gates of
it's
Heaven
Gates, right?
Yeah. So
Right
they
behind
have
it.
the
Okay.
really nice sidewalk on their side. There's no sidewalks on this side. And so when they build their sidewalk, it's literally just going to end. But we said, that's okay. Get the sidewalk in and then you know, we can make more sidewalk connections later. Let's at least get as much sidewalk as we can possibly get in from this developer. And then we'll, you know, keep working on it, because
Hey, Laura, I
Yes.
have a question.
So pedestrians would cut across in front of the adult care home to get from Eastern Parkway to Upper Union?
so this is actually 1760 Union Street. That's a Coldwell Banker building.
Oh, okay.
This is the Brookdale home. So they would go, they're a couple properties away. Here's the bank. Sorry, I'm moving so fast. So it goes, I think
Two
this
banks.
is like the First Union Bank or something. There's a
Yep,
bank.
that's First Union, then it's M&T.
Then it's the Coldwell Banker building. Then it's the new building.
Yeah.
And here's the apartment complex for seniors. But there is a nice sidewalk on this side. But you know, more sidewalks the merrier, if you ask me.
Hey, Laura, I have a question. When we looked at this last time, or the last time I saw it, the building was in the center of the lot, and now it's shifted to the side. And I'm looking at it,
Yeah.
and when you look at the Coldwell Banker building, the parking lot is going to be adjacent to the parking lot as the building is currently oriented. So the visual impact is going to be huge, because basically you're going to have like a four-row parking lot in there. Is there any reason why the building couldn't be centered or perhaps pushed on the other side of the lot, and the whole thing flipped over on the other side, and that way it would break the parking lot up? And from a pedestrian standpoint, it would look a lot better.
So they were trying to maximize green space and like make more of a, like, you know, the walkability with the sidewalk and the front door and all of that, and try and tuck more of the parking to the side and the rear. Because if you had both access points had to be two-way and they were going around the building and stuff, so it was like a way to reduce like just driving surface, I think, and make
Yep.
it look a little more residential.
Yeah, I guess what
The
I might
developer
suggest,
initially had it in the middle. Sorry, what?
what I might suggest is flipping it completely over and putting the building on the right-hand side and putting the parking lot wrap around the other way, because visually, I think when you go down that street, you're going to see a sea of parking lots, and it's better to have the buildings break the parking lots up so they're not as imposing on the residential nature. One of the problems with urban parking lots is they tend to break up the landscape. So I think from a visual standpoint, the layout would be better if the building was on the east side of the lot as opposed to the west side, and just flip the parking lot around.
Okay.
We can always ask, I guess, right? And developers generally get agita about that sort of thing, but now it's only what's on paper. So
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying, but I did just take a quick look and zoomed in. There's actually a pretty wide water easement on that other side, Dart. That may be part of it. So if you look at the building on the other side of the lot, there's a water easement running down that edge of the property. But like I said, you can always ask. and see what
I'd
they can
ask
do.
and see if we can do it.
Landscaping.
Mhm.
okay. Anything else on 2147 Eastern Parkway? Any other observations from anyone else on the committee? Okay. Laura put down discussion items, and I have kind of a medium list, which some part of it is just kind of updating folks on a few things I've learned since we met last time. And I got about 10 on my list, so maybe we'll get to 2 or 3, and we can stop and talk about these, or if we've talked about it before and we don't need to burn too much time, that's fine. The first one I had was I had a couple conversations with our county legislators, Michelle Osterlich, and also with Sarah Mae Pratt. And it's a county road. Dean Street is a county road, and they're thinking about striping it as a traffic calming measure. And Sarah May also asked me about whether it was wide enough to do a bike path on it. And so I said I'd well, we could think about it. And I do want to say that they do have a traffic control device. First, just on traffic calming, that's about before you get to Webster, that just it generates traffic counts and it gives you average speed and that sort of thing. And I do have some tables on that I just got yesterday or the day before, and I can send out to the committee. But it really looks like just having that speed control sign has made a difference in speed on Dean Street. That in 2017, that's kind of pre-pandemic, they had the speed sign up there, and average speed was about 33 miles an hour. This would be Dean and Webster. And the average speed of cars that were going over the 85th percentile, average was about 38 miles per hour. And then they have painted some crosswalks at McClellan and Dean, and they looked at some data October 20 and July of 2021. And really, when you have the traffic control device there, the average speed's gone down to 25 miles an hour and 220 and 24 miles an hour. That's the average speed for all cars. And then the average speed for those, then they show also the percent of cars that are going over the speed limit, 15% in October of 2020 and 11% in July of 2021. And the average speed for those that are over the 85th percentile, it's gone down a little, about 33 to 34 miles an hour. And so it's dropped about 4 miles per hour. And then when you get to October of 2021, again, having the speed control device at Dean and Webster, the average speed they're getting now is 26 miles an hour, which really from 2017, the average speed was 33 and it's now 26. So that's about 7 miles per hour slower on the average traffic. And 85th percentile is still 35. So those that are over in the 85th percentile and higher still, it's down a little, 38 to 35. But it does appear that just having a speed control sign where motorists see how fast they're going seems to make a difference on the street. So it's kind of 2 or 3 questions that I had from that. One was just, hey, if a speed control sign seems to make a difference, if there really is still a speeding issue on Fieldstone Drive over between Console Road and State Street, that it just put a sign there that just asked the PD to buy a speed control sign, put it up. And so motorists, when they kind of have that wide stretch on Fieldstone, if they see their speed and it helps reduce it. And, another thought that I mentioned to Laura was just you get some evergreen shrubs that don't grow too high, and you put a dozen of those in the path between the bike path and the street on Fieldstone, and see if both of those aren't a traffic calming measure. And the other question was the possibility of a bike path on Dean. When I drove it today, really when you turn the corner on Dean from Knott Street, it's about 27 feet across. And when you get down closer to Webster, it goes to 30 feet. And I kind of asked Jim Levy if he had any examples of, is this road already too narrow to have a painted bike path on it? And I'm sure the county probably, I know I've said it before, and I'd ask folks, it's just kind of a homework to consider driving Dean, that when you turn on to Dean from Knott Street and you drive Dean all the way down to Providence and you look at the city side, the west side, you can see how easy it would be to put a hike and bike path right in there, that you've already got an asphalt curb there. both Andrew and Clark Henry have said, gee, it's important to have a couple feet of space, it's green space between the road and a hike and bike path, so the trucks with the windows on the side don't whack people that are on the bike path. And you wouldn't have to do a 10-foot path, but you can do 8-foot, and you'd get all the way down to Providence, which is a great thing. And so I know I've hit you with 2 or 3 ideas there, but the county, I think, is going to stripe Dean as a traffic calming thing. I don't think there's enough space there, but maybe Jim Levy could show us something that, hey, there is enough space to do a bike path there. At least when you turn the corner at Knott and Dean, it doesn't look like there's enough space for a painted bike path on the road. But anyway, I'm going to stop there.
Well, Billy, I mean, you asked me a question. I mean, I'd have to go out and measure it, obviously, and take a look at it. I don't know. I mean, I drive it, walk it, bike it all the time, but I don't know the existing conditions. But I do know once you get to the other side of Baker, which is up to the north between Baker and Providence, is much wider. That's the section, you and I looked at, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, that I think there's a lot of width up there that we can talk about. Once you get below Baker, it starts to narrow. And then once you get below Lexington, it may even narrow a little bit more. I'm not sure. That's where it starts to get tough, in my opinion. But I don't have any answers for you right now, because I'd have to go out and measure it with a wheel and see what the opportunities are. But yeah.
So I can tell you, like, Dean Street has an 80-foot right of way between Knott and Providence. It's 80 feet.
Wow.
And the road is slightly wider. Like, they're typically like 24 to 26, and the Dean Street's like in the 30.
When you get down, it's 30, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's about
then
27.
the right of way does narrow, and that's when the road actually narrows. So it is actually, the pavement is wider when the right of way is wider, and then the pavement narrows down when the right of way narrows down. But I actually am not even, I mean, we had talked about a road diet on Dean Street. I think it's a really great idea, but I think you would still need slightly more pavement than what is there if you're going to do an on-street bike lane. You would have to do a little bit of taking or changing things to make it work.
Especially in light of the article that you just sent out. I mean, when I looked at the sidewalk that woman was running on, she got hit by a side mirror from a truck. I thought that was plenty of space, and I was shocked that she was still struck by a vehicle. So, if we were to do something on Dean Street, it would be at least that narrow, if not narrower, and there would be no gap. We'd just be talking an asphalt curve or maybe bumps in the road. So you have to consider that as well.
Well, our county legislator, Michelle Osterlich, I told her we were thinking about a demonstration project on Lexington Parkway where we would do a painted path. And she said she'd be very interested in what we learned from that, what the neighbors say about it. I mean, if they're willing to do it, and then we paint it and, we try it out for a couple months or however long it would go, or until the paint fades off, because then you'd have an example of a road where the hike and bike path is on the same road as the auto traffic lanes. And, how does that work? And so that would be, I don't even know if we have a road in the town of Niskayuna that we have a painted bike lane on where you can go and try it out. And so we maybe even have to find one, but they were very interested in that. And I guess just based on the news clip that Paulina mentioned, and then Andrew sent us all a clip on really his experience, even just walking on Rosendale Road, walking on the sidewalk that's between Mayfair and Rose Hill. I mean, I don't even know it's 5 feet. It might even be a 4 feet concrete sidewalk, but he's just saying, I could be worried about getting hit in the back of the head by a mirror on a truck because the sidewalk is so close to the roadway. And then, Clark Henry also, sent a note saying that, gee, the town tries to have space green space between a bike path and the roadway. And the example of the woman in Bethlehem, I almost just feel like we should be advocates of kind of like Windsor Drive, that you've got the roadway, then you've got a couple feet of green space, and then you've got a hike and bike path, and that would kind of be our model. And
Though I do think that would be like the gold standard, right? I mean, that's what that's your aspirational, and not all streets would require that. I don't think that gold standard, but I think that's a good way to start. And I was thinking about that woman in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
You know, there is no buffer there, and some of those trucks, those mirrors stick way out. So not all trucks are like that, but I mean, I've seen them sticking way out. So your tires can be in the, within those white lines, but it's not going to help because they're sticking way out there. So that lady was really.
yeah, that's why I'm almost wondering on streets in Niskayuna, if we painted the street with a share row, and do we just need to do citizen education to where we have roads that are going to be used by bikes and pedestrians and cars, that we need to be respectful of each other and understand there are bikers and pedestrians on the roads, and rather than trying to segregate with the bike path, that on narrow roads, that you just have to expect that there's going to be some pedestrians and bikers on the road. Now that won't work with Balltown Road, but
yes,
So-
I think we should always strive for green space. I mean, but if you look at like Rosendale and Van Antwerp, they are farm to market roads, so there's not a lot of right of way. Generally, the right of way is right there. So I think Rosendale was important to start putting a sidewalk in there, and I think we worked with what we had available. But I agree with you, it's not an ideal situation, but I don't know, not having a sidewalk is an ideal situation either. I mean, I don't know, it's a difficult situation.
Yeah. So
Oh, go ahead. No, sorry.
Carla?
go ahead, Carla.
No, the proposed sidewalks over in Glenville, aren't they just 5 feet with no buffer? The funding they just got for the new Glenville projects, but they were working with limited space, and they just want pedestrians to be able to walk to school.
Yeah, I think that's almost kind of a hazard, that especially close to a school, if you see the situation in Bethlehem where you've got the road, it's almost like you need a pretty steep curb and then the sidewalk. But really, I think they'd be much better off to talk to some of the property owners about moving further, so that you've got road, 2 or 3 feet of green space, and then a walkway. And I do have to confess that Councilwoman Denise Murphy McGraw has indicated that the town's going to work hard on getting a sidewalk or an asphalt path on Plum Street between Van Antwerp and then getting to the school property, and then over the school property to the bottom of the sidewalk at Hillside Elementary. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm hopeful that's either in the budget or the town's working on getting some grant money. But it's also the case that when you look at Cornelius Avenue from Story down to the school, that if you look at the city side or the west side, that it's really, in my view, is a very clean shot, that you could do a hike and bike path along there that would be 8 feet, so that you get off the road. You have 2 feet of 2 or 3 feet of green space, and then you have a hike and bike path that would take you from Story Avenue, not Story, but Ray Street, all the way down to Hillside Elementary. And Laura said that might be a $300,000 project, but I think that's a good, safe routes to schools kind of a thing. And you want to get the young kids out of the road with the cars and the buses in a separate place to walk. And so, and I mean, I've also been talking to our county reps about Rosendale Road, and they're it's at least on their radar. They're thinking about, well, maybe we could get some grant money, just like we did with the Complete Streets, the $900,000 they got to do a sidewalk to Glencliff and Sacandaga Elementary, and also to do the side path on Applause. That they're now saying, gee, Rosendale Road is a possibility for some grant money too. And I really think kind of a couple next steps that we might want to do to help that out is maybe a 3 or 4 page position paper that part would be based on Carla's letter to our county representatives about, what are the benefits to having an asphalt side path on Rosendale Road? That it serves Rosendale Elementary, it serves Van Antwerp Middle School, it serves the Leishakill Preserve. It's also a corridor that lets people that are on Godfrey and Rose Hill and all those streets either go south to get to Upper Union or go the other direction to get to Leishakill Preserve, or even eventually to the hike and bike path, and certainly to the schools. And then now we have Rosendale is kind of a real, because it's fast, it's narrow, it's curvy. People that have lived over there, and Andrew might even tell us that, it's dangerous to walk on that road. I wouldn't let my kids bike or walk there. But Troy Road is also a border that cuts half the town off from the other half. And so if we have a hike and bike path on Rosendale, then once we get some crosswalks on Troy Road, then people can come over on Vroman and the other streets, Algonquin, to get to Rosendale Road. And, it just helps more people be able to bike and walk to get where they want to go. And so a lot of these projects are 10-year projects. But, I think what we can do now is to identify the homes that are there, to have a position paper that we'd share with our county reps, but would also be something that might go to the residents on the road saying, gee, we're thinking about this. Here's all the positives. And you kind of build up some momentum of folks that maybe don't live on Rosendale, but live on either side or in a more general community that would really benefit from having the side path that's in there. And in my note to the Complete Streets before, I just feel like what they're doing in Applause is a perfect metaphor for Rosendale Road. They got the grant money to do that. And so, we should encourage them to do something similar for our own community. And so that's a thought. Anyone else have another thought? Carla wrote a nice letter, of kind of continuing to support the idea of a side path on Rosendale Road that would certainly go from Rose Hill down to the Leishakill Preserve. Okay. Anybody have a thought about just on Fieldstone Drive, just putting a speed control sign over there? Is that something that we could recommend to police committee, the town police committee, to say, look, if you have a speed issue over there, this is inexpensive. And if it gets you 7 miles an hour lower on the average speed, then why not do it? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know, Bill, if they may have had one, because remember, the police are the ones that actually referred the issue to us. So I think they did measure it and found the speed was high. Like a lot of times when they put them out, the perception of speed is actually a little bit different than what's monitored and measured. But Fieldstone is one of the places where they actually had a higher than usual speed. So I think they may have put it out there. I can double check on that for you. But
I would share this data on Upper Dean Street with the police committee, even just a summary, and they'll see the data. They put the machines out and collected the data. To me, it's evidence from their own data collection that the sign actually works, and they don't have to put chicanes on the road or plant trees or wait for trees to grow. It's something they can do right now, that if it gets you a 7 mile an hour reduction in average speed, if I lived over there, I'd say, hey, let's do it. Let's buy a machine and put it in. So I see heads nodding.
Type of sign too, Bill, like the one that's in front of Mr. Mastriani's house is just a sign with a solar panel on the top, and it just tells you what speed you're driving right now. And then there are others that I don't know where I saw it, but it tells you what the posted speed is, and then it tells you what your current driving speed is. And if you're over the posted speed, there's like yellow flashing signs to kind of warn you that you're going too fast. And it's subtle, but it's alarming to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going too fast. So there's different variations of those signs, and it might depend on what type of signage they used. I think the ones that Niskayuna owns are the first kind I described, that are like the ones in front of Mr. Mastriani's house.
Well, I mean, if they're going to buy one, we should maybe get one that A, collects the data, and B, maybe blinks or whatever, as you're describing right here, whatever would be most effective. I think that we should recommend that. And I would say that people think it's a reasonable idea that, you know, Complete Streets Committee recommends to the Town Police Committee that they investigate putting one of these signs on Fieldstone Drive.
So did we decide to not do a demo project in that area? I wasn't at the last meeting. I wasn't there.
No,
I think we should, because the road is so open. It's different than Old Niskayuna. Like, I think we could do different treatment down there, just to see how it works. I would still like to do something down there. But I also wanted to say, I think that we bought 4. As far as I know, we have actually 4 of those signs, the signs that measure your. And I don't know if Windsor Drive blinks at you, but Windsor Drive has one that says thank you if you're going under the speed limit, and it tells you what your speed limit is if you go over.
I'd almost be reluctant to take one out of an existing location because those people would be upset. And let's just buy 2 more and put one of them on Fieldstone Drive.
Right on this, and I think get used to them, so they actually recommend that you move them around.
So yeah, but there are a couple things. So that's what I was going to say. Again, my managing expectations line here, because that's what I do as a planner. I want stuff to actually get done and people to realize what some limitations are. I agree with Laura. I've read that after a while, people do get used to them and keep speeding. I'm hoping that the data is right, and maybe people just don't realize they're driving as fast as they are because the road is as wide as it is, and those are kind of informing them of that. I know I went to one of the meetings for the whole Knott Street project, which we're not going to talk about, but one of the people came in and started complaining about all the speeds on the road, and then said, oh, and by the way, every once in a while I catch myself doing 45. It's like, okay, well, you know, now what? You know, so if that's the case, that's great. I do think it's good to keep these in a location for a while to see, you know, to be able to get a trend over time. And the only other caveat I would put out there is, as we all know, we're living in COVID, and that has completely upended everything related to traffic and peak hour and all that kind of stuff. It is slowly getting back to normal, but it is not the same as it was prior to COVID. Even now, there's still a lot of people working from home. So it's changed the dynamic a little bit. So we don't necessarily have as many cars in one place at the same time on our side roads. It's spread out a little bit more. So yeah, I think if we can get one put in or some put in and start showing some trends that these are making a difference, I think that would be great. But I think we also need to get some of that data to show us over a bit of time, kind of what's going on. I don't remember what the timeline was on those counts, but I don't know if it was 6 months or a year or a little more. Right now, again, it's a little messed up, but you know, getting a solid year plus worth of data, you know, would be good. And it doesn't necessarily have to stay, you know, in that place for a straight year. You know, maybe we put a sign on a certain road the fall of every year for a couple of years and see what happens. And then it moves somewhere else for the summer or something like that. So we can track the same trend at the same time of year, you know, that kind of thing. So you don't want to do one in the winter at one location and then go back and put it there in the summer the next time. You can't really compare that, you know, with the seasonality of things. So I think there are options, but yeah, I think we should definitely keep trying these to see, you know, what they do and what the trends are.
Okay. We still have a couple more minutes, and let me just to Laura on the school speed zones. Did the letter to the state from both the school and the town go to DOT for the 20 mile an hour on Balltown Road?
No, oh, thank you, Ken.
Go back to story.
Oh, sorry.
I'll call you later.
Okay. Sorry. We have building department problems sometimes. No, after our last meeting, I reached out to both the outgoing superintendent and the new superintendent, and I said, hey, I heard from someone that it went to the school town board and nobody objected to it. It sounded like everything was fine with it. So I literally just need to get them to sign, and the town is still very on board, but I haven't been able to get anybody to email me back. So I can try one more time. I don't know that there's any objection, but I'm having a hard time getting a hold of the superintendent.
Okay.
I
Laura,
imagine
I was
it's
on
just a transition thing, but
I was on that school board meeting. They did discuss it. I don't think they took any formal action other than to, I think maybe tell Kazi could sign it. I don't really remember, but I do know they talked about it and there were no objections to the content.
yeah. Yeah, and the town has already said no problem, so we just need to get it signed by the school.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Also, Laura, did we ever hear from the school? I mean, we gave them our proposals for
Oh,
pedestrian access paths to each campus. And I guess I'm just wondering, do we have any way of knowing whether those are going to be part of the final plan for the parking lot and other pedestrian and bike improvements to the school campuses? I mean, is the engineers like what
so
we
the
gave
next
them?
step on that was that we were supposed to meet with their design engineers, and Cosmo was scheduling that with us. He didn't want us to meet when they didn't have designs, because then better designs, because then we would just be rehashing what we already submitted. But he had said that when they got the designs, that he would have us sit down with the engineers, like just us and the engineers. Great. But I think also that may have gotten lost in the transition, which is a little unfortunate. So I put that in the same email, and I'll resend it again.
Okay.
Because what I know is
Okay.
that the school letter is almost ready to go and could go at any point as soon as the school signs it. And that our next step on their development plan to mitigate some of the traffic impacts of combining the schools and stuff is to sit down with their engineers and go over the pedestrian and bicycle connections.
Okay, that sounds good. The safety signage that Paulina's been working on, are we any closer to having real signs that we're going to put up on the Mohawk Hudson bike path?
That was a me question. Sorry. I was just writing myself an email to no,
I mean, I thought at one of our
bring them
last
to the
meetings, we
highway
all basically
department.
approved the sign that Paulina had made and we were ready to go. I don't know if we have to look at them again, but if we're okay with the sign, then I guess it's kind of, what is the next step? Is it asking Ray Smith or somebody to get some signs made? And
Yeah. So what I think we should do is, and probably we said this before, and I'm sorry about that, but I will go find that email again, is bring the signage to the highway department and see if we can get them to support it and install it. They're not very expensive. I know our budget lines are super tight, so I can't volunteer other people's budget lines, but it isn't terrible. So I could see if we could squeeze that in, if there's any extra this year.
okay. A couple more items, quickies here. What about setting up a meeting with the state DOT engineer that supervises the roads for Niskuna? We do have the priority letters, and Paulina has reminded us back at the beginning of the year that, okay, so you wrote him a letter, then what? Maybe it just goes into the pile and that's that. But if you actually have a meeting, and Catherine knows the DOT folks, so we've got an in already right there that I'm sure if you and Catherine and Paulina sit down with the engineer, that we'll get some results. But we do need to schedule a meeting, I guess, and I don't know if we want to still try to fit one in this year or what the plan is. And Catherine has pointed out, you do have your priority letters, but if you've got, I don't know, a crosswalk on Balltown and Almeria or anything else that you want to talk about, you want to have a list of 3 or 4 items that you ask them. And so I guess I'm just wondering, are we still going to plan to do that?
I can set up a meeting. The DOT reached out to me recently because they may be redoing the intersection of Union and Balltown Road because of the pavement and stuff is bad. And so they were asking about the crosswalks there. And so I may just be able to be like, hey, here's my opinion on the crosswalk. Can we also meet about this? Like, that would be pretty easy. I can put that in to the email that I'm working on for them.
Even if it's just having a cup of coffee with Mark and, we'll show him our electronic plan for pedestrian and bike access throughout the town. And I'm getting some new 3-foot by 3-foot plans printed up. And so I'm going to give one to Catherine and Andrew soon. And anybody else that doesn't have one that wants another one, let me know. But, just as evidence that we really had, I'm going to say 20 years of working on this kind of stuff in the town, and that getting across Troy Road is a real problem. And we need to ask the state about some crosswalks and do that. And then obviously the Balltown Road, but we need to have that conversation. So we need to set that meeting up. Then on the survey, I haven't made as much progress as I wanted. That I want to get the tables from our survey in Excel, and then kind of a summary of some of the other oral statements that people made, kind of to summarize those a little bit, and then do a little write-up of how we collected the data and get that out, because I have our county reps and other officials in town, the town board members are all like, gee, you guys did a survey. What did you learn? And I think, as Jim Levy has pointed out several times, that, if you have done a survey to residents, it's not just the Complete Streets do-gooders that are asking for things. That, we've asked the citizens of the town their opinions about some of these things, and here's what % feel on some of these issues. And so we need to get that together and put it on our website and share it with the town board. And so it's, I fault myself most because I haven't made as much progress on it as I'd hoped, but I do want to get it done and get it out there. So then,
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
It's 4:00, so Laura's gonna have to get going.
Okay. Okie dokie. Well,
All right.
I appreciate everyone joining and taking Jim Levy's advice. We'll try to get action items and brief summary of the minutes out to members in a timely fashion, so we're ready to go. And we don't have a meeting in November, but we will in December. And we'll also have an election, and we want to make sure the new board is energized by our thoughts. And if they have millions of dollars of American recovery money landing in their laps, that we provide them with some ideas on how to use some of it. So that will be another goal. Anyway, hope you all have a nice Thanksgiving, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll move it. Looking for a second. Paulina offers a second, so we're moved and adjourned. So thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Bill. I have a bunch of follow-up things, and I'll
Thanks,
follow up
Bill.
with you guys because we have a time.
Okay, good. Okay. Bye-bye.